tomorrow night, the vice president's debate, of course, more important with one age 74 and ill and another age 77. Kevin Cirilli joins us right now. Kevin, the polling that's come out, the NBC poll and now the CNN SRSS poll, how does that change things for the Biden campaign? How do they adapt to the good news?
Well, there's no question that Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has the clear advantage amongst the polls, not just at the national level, now at double digits, according to the CNN poll as well as NBC poll that have come out within the last 48 hours, but also in battleground states, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, where local affiliate polls have him also up by 8 percentage points at least. A campaign is a political chess match, but with right now the president recovering from COVID-19, albeit at the White House, those chess pieces are off the board. No more campaign rallies, no more ability to meet one-on-one with donors, and all of that adds to an increased amount of pressure for Vice President Mike Pence here in Salt Lake City. The Trump campaign needs a major shift in terms of the dynamics of this race, and they're looking to get it here in Salt Lake, where you've got Pence, who was leading the coronavirus task force in the administration, and Senator Kamala Harris, who is going to be trying to draw a sharp contrast amongst Republicans.
Kevin, this is brilliant. Okay, the vice president hours ago was studying the 25th Amendment of the Constitution to figure out what his duties would be if, God forbid, things got worse as well. He's in charge of our COVID project for the president. It's really worked out, right? How is he going to defend this and change the vector for the president?
Well, you know, and I say this very, very simply, right? Because campaigns are essentially, and not just campaigns, but also political offices are essentially small businesses. And so obviously the CEO, being President Trump, returning to work, but staffers at every level have contracted this virus. They're not immune to this virus, even though it is the office of the executive. That has led to a palpable level of angst that has permeated, based upon my reporting, throughout the president's re-election campaign, from the lowest of low staffers to the upper echelons in terms of the inner circle of the president's closest advisors. All of that just goes to show you what we are shaping up to have in Salt Lake City, which is a debate where you've got now the New York Times reporting that the debate commission is reportedly considering having there be a virtual debate in Miami next week and a debate here in Salt Lake, where, as you mentioned it, both of these VP nominees are just a heartbeat away from the presidency.
Kevin, my old producer, came up to me here in London this morning and said if last week and the last debate was the fight, is tomorrow night the debate about policy? Do you think we can actually focus on policy tomorrow?
Well, stylistically, you're absolutely correct. There's a growing consensus, and the polls indicate this, that the president really took a hit in terms of his strategy that he utilized last week in Ohio. And so I would argue that you could not get two more stylistically different politicians in Vice President Pence as well as President Trump. I also want to note the incredible pressure that Senator Harris and VP Pence have right now, because both of them are also playing a political marathon game, and they could have political careers that extend beyond the top of their respective tickets. So there's that element to this as well. In terms of policy, look, geopolitically speaking, based upon the polls that have come out, the president has not enjoyed the bump that other world leaders have gotten out of contracting COVID-19. I'm thinking of UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, where he got a slight bump, then went back down, or Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who also received an increase in the polls. So again, there needs to be a shift. The Republicans haven't gotten one. You're starting to see polls tighten and the down ballot races as well. And that gets even more interesting in terms of the policy implications of what happens in now what J.P. Morgan and other analysts are saying could actually be a short election week in November if the polls stand.
Well, Kevin, where's the leadership coming from? So the president's tested positive for COVID. The First Lady has tested positive for COVID. The campaign manager has tested positive for COVID. The press secretary has tested positive for COVID. The RNC chair has tested positive for COVID. The debate coach, the former New Jersey governor, Mr. Christie, he has also tested positive for COVID. Who's leading right now, Kevin?
In addition to 2 senators on the Senate Judiciary Committee who were on the confirmation process for the Supreme Court Justice, Judge Amy Coney Barrett. In terms of who's leading, the president is leading. I can tell you, based upon conversations that I've had in the last 24 hours with sources at the White House, as well as on the president's reelection campaign, that they are taking their cues from President Trump. I also want to note the economic angle here, because it's something we haven't touched on. Speaker Pelosi, Secretary Mnuchin going to continue their negotiations. They're inching closer, albeit slowly, to a deal. $2.2 trillion for the Democrats, $1.6 trillion for the Republicans. And look, I mean, the fiscal stimulus, the economic angle here is not something that is the driving force of this race, which is something that Republicans were hoping would shift at this point, less than a month out until Election Day. Now you've got cases on the rise in battleground states like Wisconsin, and it's all anyone is talking about, not only in Ohio, where we were last week, but also anecdotally here in Utah as well.
I'm still trying to digest what you said, that they're inching closer to some sort of deal on fiscal support. They've been inching closer for the past 2 months, frankly, for the past 3 months. Are we anywhere actually closer to doing something, or is it just that they're talking about talks a little bit more regularly now?
Lisa, I hear you. I put that question to sources back in Washington, D.C. And they're looking at the parameters of the debate that's framed. I was struck when the president was at Walter Reed over the weekend. He had a conversation with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell specifically on the fiscal stimulus. A lot of the folks back in Washington, D.C. interpreting that, Lisa, as a step of this is a president who needs a win, and he's looking anywhere he can to get one. There's a lot of incentive now from the executive branch to deliver on stimulus.